today called Time of Your Life based on a North Point series. And so as we start the new year, for the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about time. One of the things that we all have in common as it relates to time is that we're all mostly fairly conscious of what time it is at any given time. Aren't we? That we always kind of know what time it is because we're checking our watches, we're checking our cell phones, right? There's always a clock on the wall somewhere. Like a dozen times a day, you check to see what time it is. And while I'm chatting with you today, which is really kind of weird, you're probably going to check your cell phone or your time at least a couple of times, even though we almost always end within a 10-minute window of when it is that we start. And still, you're going to be checking how it is that we are doing for time. As a society, we're very time conscious, aren't we? We are. I think the question that we ask probably more than any other question in the world is, what time is it? What time is it? You got the time? What time is it? I think it's later than that, actually. We're fairly time conscious, but what time is it? Is something that we're constantly asking. But I think the better question is, as it relates to time, is not what time is it, but what am I doing with my time? And the problem with always checking to see what time it is that it is a constant reminder of the thing that is probably most depressing to you and me, and that is, your time is running out. It is. That second we just took is another time when you are closer to the grave. Congratulations. It's true. And the problem with watches and calendars is that we can see how fast time is actually ticking by. Tick, tick, watch your life slip away. Tick, tick, there goes another. Oh man, oh dear. It's going. It is just absolutely depressing if I keep talking about it. In fact, the older you get, though, too, the faster time seems to go by. And you may know this. This is actually there is actually a scientific explanation as to why it is that as you grow older, time goes by faster. And it's not just your imagination. Science has shown that you literally experience time as if it's going faster the older you get. But when you were a kid, man, Christmas couldn't come soon enough. When you're an adult, you're like, oh man, Christmas is every time we turn around, only 359 more sleeps. Right? We're constantly reminded. Thank you. So one of the worst things that you can ask is what time it is, because it's just a reminder that click, 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 tick, 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 time is slipping away. In fact, if you haven't gotten to this point in your life, then you probably will eventually. You're going to get to the point where you start thinking about how old it is that you are, and you start thinking about how much time you have left. Now, this generally happens in about the mid-40s. It's not the same for everybody. But eventually you get to a point where instead of thinking, how old am I? You start thinking, how much time have I got left? It's a happy thought, isn't it? What is it that my time is going to be like? Oh man, it's running out. You're going to start looking into the future and you're going to start getting a sense that there is a finish line in the near distance. This didn't happen to me when I had cancer. This actually happened to me last year. It was kind of weird. It was kind of like a midlife lull. Jody and I began just talking a little bit more about timelines, about, man, if we want to get the things that we want to get accomplished in this life, then we better get started on some things. We started to realize that, there is an end out there, so if we're going to get the things that we want to do with our life before the end, we got to start putting some dates to our time. Am I the only one? Some of you are just too young to start thinking like that yet, and that's a good thing. Because at midlife, there is something that begins to happen in our minds. We stop thinking about how old we are, and we start thinking about how much time we have left. And I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand if you have already begun to think like this. I'm tempted to ask you to do that, but I wouldn't embarrass you to say that you are middle-aged or older. But some of you, I can already see as I'm looking around here, some of you are starting to go, yeah, even you watching online, no, I see it. Others of you are like, oh, no, I don't think that, and Frank, I need to start praying for you more. Because it's really sad. But if it wasn't enough, someone recently introduced me to the deathclock.com. How many of you are familiar with deathclock.com? About 6 of you. All right. Basically, it's kind of wonderful, this thing. You put in your birthday, you put in your general health, and then you put in your general outlook on life, and then poof, this clock pops up on the screen, and it starts telling you exactly what it is that you're going to die, and it starts counting down the seconds for your death date. It's fantastic. Someone will check it out. Again, it is kind of sad and morbid, but the point is, time just keeps on clicking by. It does. And on one hand, we don't want to be reminded of the fact that time is ticking down, but on the other hand, we're constantly saying, well, what time is it? Oh man, time flies. Oh man, I lost track of time. Oh man, how could it be New Year's again? 2018? Just where did the time go? And that's where it is that we're at sometimes, right? So maybe a better focus for us this morning, rather than what time it is, should be asking, what am I doing with my time? That maybe I should begin living my life by spending my time with an end in mind. Now, that's a big idea, and perhaps maybe we need some real help for that today, and from a guy that some of you may be familiar with. His name is Moses. Moses is basically the guy who wrote the first 5 books of what we call the Old Testament, the first chunk of the Bible. Moses kind of like hangs out in that chunk for those of you who are just new to this faith thing. Now Moses, you may not know this, actually wrote one of the Psalms. A guy named King David wrote most of the other Psalms, but one in particular was written by Moses. Now Moses is a great person to go to when it comes to talking about and learning about time. Here's why. Moses, as many of you may know, when he was a baby, he was a Hebrew, and his sister actually took him through a crazy series of events. Pharaoh ended up, it's just a short name I call for him. Pharaoh ended up getting this, Pharaoh's daughter ended up getting this baby. And he was raised like an Egyptian. He learned to talk like an Egyptian. He walked like an Egyptian. This is literally what it is that he got to do. And then one day, in his late teens, early 20s, he realized, I'm not an Egyptian, I'm a Hebrew, and the other Hebrews in my world are slaves. And so he got fed up with these Egyptians, and he got fed up with how it is that the Egyptians were treating the Hebrews, and so he decided to do something about it. He starts watching how it is that his people are being treated, and he gets in a fight with a few Egyptian slave drivers, and then he ends up in a fight with them, and he ends up killing them. And so he's run out of the country, and he fled for his life, actually, headed out into the wilderness. So he went from like this prince of Egypt to this nothing nobody in the wilderness, living out in the wilderness. And while he's out there, he runs into these shepherds, and they hire him, and he becomes a shepherd. And here's the interesting thing. Moses spent the next 40 years of his life doing nothing special. Nothing. Every day was the same. He didn't even have to look at the watch. Because if the sun was up, he was with the sheep. If the sun was down, he was with the sheep. It was sheep, 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 sheep. A whole lot of sheep. That's what he did with his time. Very little in the way of a grand purpose for 40 years. Then after 40 years, God said, okay, Moses, I actually have a plan and purpose for your life. Would you like to get in on it? And so he brings Moses out of obscurity, and he takes him back to Egypt, and Moses says, let my people go, right? And Pharaoh's like, no, and then back and forth, back and forth. Eventually, Pharaoh lets the people go. He changes his mind, and Moses becomes a household name, and he leads the nation of Israel out of Egypt. And 3,000 years later, how many of you have heard of Moses before? Okay, most of you, some of you not. That's okay. Well, you didn't raise your hand. I can see you. But it's okay. I'm not pointing you out, but I did. So most of us have heard of Moses willingness to recognize that God had a call and a plan for his life. Now, with all of that as a backdrop, all of his grand life that got him to this point, I mean, as a prince, he's on top of the world, and then he's in the valley, right? And he's back on top of things after 40 years of doing nothing. Moses had some incredible perspective when it came to time. So in this psalm that we're going to look at this morning, Moses gives us a perspective on how it is that we should view our time. And here's what it is that he is going to tell us. Even before we look at this together, in fact, even before I bring up the verse up there, he's going to tell us this. Context is everything with time. Context is everything with time. That God created a context, and that all of our little snippets of time, all of our little moments of all of our little itty-bitty, seemingly insignificant lives at times fit into a context. Our 70, our 80 years, we think is a long time. Our little moments of time fall within the context of what God is going to say here, which is our lives have a point, and we're not it. Our lives have a point, but we're not it. Because as we begin to look into the future, and here's why, and here's what it is that we see. Everybody is the same. We are. I don't know if you've noticed this, but everybody is the same. We're born. We go to elementary school. We go to middle school. We go to high school. Eventually we get a job. Some of us get married. Some have kids. The kids grow up. Then we retire. Then we play golf. Then we get sick. Then we die. Now, before you laugh too much about that, how many of you know people that is actually their story, or that was their story? Raise your hand. Come on, God. Tons of us know people who basically that is the story of their life. Like everybody you've ever known, that is the story of their life. It's kind of a version of that. But at what point do we get to a place where we go, what is the point of that? Like, really? What's the point of that? Now, I don't know where it is that your faith thing is at. Lots of people, diverse kind of backgrounds here. But for those of you who believe in reincarnation, I've got some bad news for you. You get to do that over and over and over and over again. And the problem is you don't really even learn it from it. You just kind of like think you're reincarnated, and I was once Alexander the Great, and then I was Cleopatra, or I was both, or whatever. But you never actually get a chance to learn from the mistakes that you made. You just kind of like do it over and over and over again. You grow up, go to elementary school, then you die. Sometimes it's prolonged. But what is all of that for? What is the point of that? And I'm not discounting reincarnation for those of you who are like, hey, no, I'm just saying you don't get a lot to learn from it. And if this is all that there is to life, that whole sequence of things, at some point you begin to realize, well, then maybe I must not be the point. So what is the point? And Moses said, heads up, I'm going to tell you, because the reason that you think you are the point, and the reason you wonder if there is a point, is because you don't maybe understand fully the context, which is what it is that we're going to talk about this morning. That God has given us just a very few years to live. And so Moses explains all of this to us in the form of a song. A song is a poetry, it's a song, and so it's a little flowery, it's a little tricky, but I want to read these verses to you and then we'll read them together. Okay? Okay? Moses is singing. He says this, "O Lord, you have been our refuge through every generation. Before the mountains were born," meaning before creation, before you gave birth to the earth and the world, you were God. You are God, I love this, from everlasting to everlasting. That is, you can go as far, if this is a timeline in front of us, if you go as far that way as far goes, and as far that way as far goes, that's God. He is everlasting to everlasting. And Moses is saying, okay, if you want to understand the bookends of your life, the bookends of your life are not your birth and your death. The bookends of your life are everlasting to everlasting. That it is everlasting to everlasting, and you with God throughout. The context for your existence, the only way you're going to ever fully understand your purpose is through the context of everlasting to everlasting. Where you can get to a point where you can say, now I know the point of my life is to understand that my context is everlasting to everlasting with God in me. It says this, you mortals turn back to dust and say, return, descendants of Adam. I love this. I picture Gandalf saying this for some reason, right? Sounds kind of like Gandalf. Dust. Shall not pass. You shall not pass. Anybody else? I like that. But Moses is saying this, no matter how cool you are, no matter how rich you are, no matter how popular you are, by the way, I'm Moses and I did some pretty cool things, no matter how much you think you got it all together, no matter what you've accomplished, how famous you are, God says, hey, return to dust, you mortals. You shall not pass. It's coming. Then he says, indeed, your sight, in your sight, I love this, you probably heard something like this before. In your sight, 1,000 years are like a single day, like yesterday, already passed, like an hour in the night. So to God, 1,000 years is like an hour in the night. I did some quick math for you, and so our 70-ish years are like 4.2 seconds for God. Okay? Done. Poof. That's it. That's what it is that it's like for God. It's quick. It's like done. Your life's gone, and and it is in this context then that we should actually reflect on our own life. And some of you are like, come on, Moses, why don't you just cheer up? Come on, Frank, why are you talking about this morning? It's like, but this is just a reality that we have to come to grips with. This is the starting point for any discussion about a person's life. Our life is a blip. Remember. Then he says, you sweep mortals away, they are a dream. They sprout again in the morning like cut grass. In the morning they blossom and sprout. In the evening they wither up and dry. He's saying this from the perspective of eternity to eternity, from everlasting to everlasting. This is what it is that a person's life is like. That's what we got to work with. Now, Moses' point is not that your life doesn't matter, although that's how sometimes it feels to us when we realize we're just a tiny little blip. Our life is so common, our life is so quick. Some of us need to realize, though, that as a result of that, it is futile for you, and it's futile for me as well, to try to create a meaningful life on our own. Because the truth is, we really don't have enough time in order to create a truly meaningful life. Our only hope for purpose, our only hope for significance, is to take our little moment of time and interject them properly into the great grand story that God has for us. In His grand timeline, where is it that our little timeline fits? Now, if that seems too much to you, too approachable to you, too out of reach for you this morning, then just pause for a moment to consider this. Consider a life in opposition to that. Have you ever spent any time or worked any time with people who just never really grew up? Where life still kind of revolves around them. They kind of like got to the age of 16 and then stopped maturing. Not, if you're 16, I'm not saying anything about that. I'm just saying, for me, when I was 16, the world revolved around me. It did. That's where it is that I was at 16. It just kind of revolved around me. But when we work with these people who never grew up, it's kind of like, ugh. Ugh. Oh. We see something in them and we're just like, ugh. We know there's something wrong with it, but we can't really put our finger on it. Right? Right? When people refuse to give in to the fact that there is no significance apart from what it is that God is up to in the world, so they try to create their own significance within the context of their life and the power that they have and the wealth that they have. They try to make things happen around them. They try to create a little dominion for themselves. And two things always happen with these folks. Two things. One, they always run out of time before they finish what it is that they were hoping to accomplish. And two, history never speaks well of them. They always run out of time, and history never speaks well of them. Because intuitively, we know when a person decides that it's all about me, and in a few years, I'm going to make it all about me. I'm going to be the center of everything. My few years that I've got, I'm going to be the focal point. Whenever a person does that, there is something in us that goes, that's just not right. There's something very selfish about it. There's something that I just don't want to emulate myself like that. You can't find a real and lasting purpose if it is all about you. Why? Because it's everlasting. Everlasting, and God is in the middle, and I am a short blip on that timeline. And so, in that context, I need to find meaning and purpose in the course of my days. Think about that for your 2018. How are you going to find meaning and purpose inside of God's grand time? Now back to Moses. Moses got as close as anyone has ever got to seeing the glory of God. I don't know how many of you have read Exodus recently. If you haven't, go back and read it. It is phenomenal. But basically, Moses came down from the mountain after spending some time with God, him saying to God, God, please show me your glory. And God's like, you can't handle the truth. And so he just gave him just a little snippet of his glory, and as a result of Moses spending time with God and getting a snippet of his glory, he came down from the mountain, and it was like people couldn't even look at him. He had to put a veil over his face because it was like he was glowing. There was a radiance emanating from him. It was like he was nuclear or something like that. And people were like, where have you been? He was like, I've been with God. I didn't even get to see the whole thing. But whoa, I just saw enough to barely survive. And this is all in the book of Exodus. Go back and read it. It's awesome. So the point is, there are certain things about the glory of God that we will never fully understand. And so Moses says, if you could see it, if we, all of us, could see the glory of God, then we would say, oh my gosh, God, in the light of who it is that you are, God, take my 70 or 80 years, and I want them to be a part of the everlasting to everlasting. I want them to be a part of your grand plan. I want you to use my little bit of time that I have to make you the point, to give you the glory. I want to use whatever it is that I've got in the context of what it is that you are doing in history. And if we could see clearly, if we could live more purposefully with that in mind, Moses, what are we supposed to do? We're not going to argue with you, Moses. I mean, we've seen enough people who never grew up to try to make our lives like them, that they just make their lives about themselves. Their time is all about them. We just don't want to go there. But at the same time, God, what are you up to? What do you want me to do then? How do we fit into your purposes and plans? God, we can't see clearly. What should we do? And then Moses, with all of his wisdom, with all of his experiences, here's what it is that he says. Here's where it is that we're going to go over the next couple of weeks. He says this, Psalm 90, verse 12. Teach us, this is him praying, teach us to number our days. God, teach us. Teach us the number of days. God, I can't do this by myself. God, I don't know what it is that I'm supposed to do. Teach me. I'm humble. I'm willing to receive. God, use me. Teach me to live as if my days are numbered. Because our days are numbered. We know that. Right? Now, numbering our days is something that every person listening has done before. You have done this before. If you're a woman and you're married, you were once a bride, and so you know what it is to number your days, because if anybody asked you before you got married how many days it was until you got married, you knew exactly how many days it was. It was 26 days and 4 hours, sometimes for some of you, because you knew all the things that needed to get done before you got married. Right? You have lists. You were planning. We're numbering your days. Guys, we've seen this before. Some of you may be going for a surgery, and you're like, oh man, I got a surgery coming up. And so, how many more days have you got to your surgery? I got 9 days. Why do you know it's 9 days? Because I got this to do, I got this to do, and I got to get this done before my surgery so that everything works out the way it's supposed to. We number our days. You know exactly everything that you need to do for that day. So Moses says, God, teach us to number our days. God, we don't know the day of our death. And since we don't know the day of our death, there's so much about you that we still have yet to understand. Teach us, God. Please just teach us what it means to live as if our days are numbered. We don't even know how many days it is that we have left. Teach us. Why is this important? Because look at this. This is so awesome. Teach us to number our days so that we may grow in wisdom. Basically, Moses is saying, I don't know how to make wise decisions. And so, God, if I can't make wise decisions in the context of what it is that you are doing, in the big timeline of what it is that is going on, God, help me understand how to number my days inside of the big context. I'll be far wiser if I make decisions within, I'll make better financial decisions. I'll make better relational decisions. I'll make better parenting decisions. I'll make better professional decisions. I'll make better educational decisions. I'll be far wiser if I make decisions within the context of your grand timeline. God, help me get a heart of wisdom and make decisions that bring glory to you and not to me. Here's Moses' point. My life is too brief to live for. My glory is too small to dedicate my whole life to. I'm going to flash, and so I don't want to waste my 70 or 80 years living for my glory. I want it to be maximized within the grand scheme of what it is that God is doing in this world. And then, at that point, my life will be something worth living for. I won't ask, God, what is all this for? Because I will understand. I'll know. It isn't for me. It's for God's glory. I get to be a part of what He is doing in everlasting to everlasting. How cool is that? It isn't for me. It's about God. In your notes, in the app, many of you have it downloaded. We put in a little prayer that I would just love for us to be able to focus on this week. We'd love it if all of you would pray together with us this week, specifically this prayer. Just bring it up. Maybe some of you need to take out your phone and take a picture of it so that you can remember it this week. Heavenly Father, teach me to number my days, that I might gain a heart of wisdom and fulfill your purpose in my life. Lord, teach me to number my days, that I might gain a heart of wisdom, that I might be able to think of time differently. I might be able to use my time more wisely. And gain a heart of wisdom so that I might fulfill your purpose for my life. Teach me to number my days. Here's the thing. If we're to live our lives as if our lives actually have a point and we're not it, we're going to need to get this figured out. We're to live our lives as part of a much grander narrative than our little bitty lives will ever impact. And we're to live and ultimately, we should live then in the context of my life is limited. I need to number it. I need to understand what it is that I need to get done each day. And so I have to get a better understanding of the everlasting to everlasting and where it is that I fit inside of it. And my little brain can't figure that out. And so God, teach me. Get into a place of 2018 where you just say, God, teach me. Teach me. God, teach me. See, if we're to live as if we've been invited into the everlasting to everlasting, that our lives are about the everlasting to everlasting, then we need to expand our thinking. We need to begin to see the people around us inside of this context. We need to see our opportunities given to us inside of this context. We need to see our money that has been given to us inside of this context. We need to see our talent inside of this context. Then suddenly we find a purpose that goes way beyond anything we would even be able to manufacture. So it just starts with this prayer. God, teach us to number our days. God, teach us to live as if our days are numbered. In 2018, that we might have a heart of wisdom. So, pray this week. You join us with this. And pray and ask God to continue to teach you. And then next week, we're going to talk about some practical stuff as a result of that. Okay? Fair? Okay, let's pray. God, thank you for this challenge. It is humbling to realize how little time we have and how grand a timeline that you are involved in. That you are eternity to eternity, everlasting to everlasting. And we are somewhere on that timeline. God, we want to be a part of what it is that you are doing. We want each breath that we take, each moment of energy that we put out, to be something that includes us in something bigger than just our tiny few 70 to 80 years, sometimes less, sometimes more. But it is still just a blink. Help us get clarity from you on what our purpose is. Help us get clarity from you on how it is that we fit, and how each of the things that we do in a day, where it is that even those things fit into your grand timeline. But in order for that to happen, God, we need you to teach us, because this is too big for us to figure out on our own. So God, speak to us. Lead us, guide us in 2018. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Maybe you want to invite somebody out next week as we talk about how to be just a little more practical with our time. Okay? Happy New Year. Be blessed.